Go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a sunny, happy Monday morning. As
Yeah,
good
this
as
is the day
Mondays
that the
get,
Lord
really.
has made.
Sorry?
This is the day that the Lord has made. Be
Yeah,
glad in it.
every day is sunny. It's just we don't often see the sun through the clouds, but every day is sunny. There we go. Right. um, this morning we are on Luke 11, and we're going to begin at, I think we got all the way down to 32, and we are now going to go the light, and then having done that, we'll move on to Pharisees and lawyers. So I don't know if someone would like to read just a couple of verses, 33 to 36,
I'll
and
Yeah,
read.
someone
do
to
that.
pray. Okay,
I'll
I
let
think David
Carolyn
pipped
read.
you to it. Would you like to pray, Carolyn?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you, Lord, for this time. Thank you for your word. Looking forward to it, and thank you for this day. And we appreciate all that you teach us through your Holy Spirit so much.
Hallelujah.
And we love you, Lord, and we need you very much. So yeah, we look forward to this now as David reads your word. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thanks,
Amen.
Carolyn. Over to you,
Sure.
David.
Okay, mine's entitled The Lamp of the Body. And I start at verse 33. No one, when he has lit a lamp, puts it in a secret place or under a basket, but on a lampstand, that those who come in may see the light. The lamp of the body is the eye. Therefore, when your eye is good, your whole body also is full of light. But when your eye is bad, your body also is full of darkness. Therefore, take heed that the light which is which is in you is not darkness. If then your whole body is full of light, having no part dark, the whole body will be full of light, as when the bright shining of the lamp gives you light.
Thank you, David. And I think looking at this, I've looked in the ESV notes. It says that the reference to lamp is probably a metaphor for Jesus and his mission. And if that's the case, you follow this through. And if the eye is the lamp of the body, and the eye is kind of like, the love of Jesus, and seeing things from a kingdom perspective, then everything around you is light. You can see where God's moving everywhere. But in some ways, if you're not that, you're seeing it differently, then it's in darkness. And it refers to revelation and understanding and some of those things, and an approach to life. I think there's a lot of different aspects in this. And there used to be a little hymn: "Be careful, little eyes, what you see," and "Be careful, little ears, what you hear," and those kind of things. I think a Sunday school kind of song. But there's that sense of what our eyes see, how we behold things, the kind of statement of seeing the world through rose-tinted glasses. I'm thinking it comes to mind as well. But I guess this is saying, view the world through Jesus-tinted glasses, and actually see the world that way. And if you do that, your whole life will be full of light. I don't know if that's the fullness of what it's saying, but I'll throw it open for comments through our wonderful people who are all capable of diving into God's word together. So I'll open it up. But Carolyn?
Yeah, I mean, we were on a. I think the awakening for me, in a way, is we're on a phone call with our friends in America. They're our old pastor,
Yeah.
and so they were basically telling us what was happening and the reality of what is actually happening in God's world at the moment, and how even like the news is very it's very, because this is quite, I'm not sure how this will be received, but even the news is not right because of who owns the news, really, and what we're being fed. And the whole thing is that Jesus sees it as it really is, Jesus sees what is going on for what it really is, because he's God. And when that's discussed, I think people don't really want to see it, but I do think that is the truth of what is actually going on. Is people don't really want to see what is going on for what it really is in the world, because it's not of Christ at all. None of it is of what is going on. There's so much out there that is not of God, that it's even hard to bring that up in to certain brothers and sisters, because it's like we don't want to see it, and it's very sobering. But that's the reality, yeah. But God is good, and God is in control, and God will never, will never be defeated. So
Yeah.
He is awesome, and
Yeah.
victorious.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Yeah.
I think in some ways the picture we've got here from Jesus is one of filling things with light, and I think the sense of in this world you'll have many troubles, but take heart, I've overcome the world. There's a warmth in some of Jesus' statements regarding the world and his approach to it. And so I think in this, it's the eyes and what we see. And I think people see things from different perspectives. And as you've shown there's the perspective of some people on the news, and some of the people doing things that have different perspectives to other people. And I think that will always be the case. But I think this passage here is maybe driving us towards seeing things in a particular light. And I think there's some, like Jesus' parables, there's a way of drawing out something deeper. And very often it's our hearts that he's after, and how we see things. And I think that's important, because we're about to go and discuss Pharisees and so on. We're not straying too far over the edge, but there's some of those things that may be the follow-on from some of the lessons of these verses. But thank you, Carolyn, and over to you, David.
Yeah, it's. I'm just looking at the previous passage where he says this is an evil generation. So he's rebuking the generation for not seeing what God's got for them. And so he's giving a sort of an illustration that actually to have sight, you have to have light, and you have to have your eyes. So your eyes cannot see the light, cannot see the truth if there's no light there. But there is light, because the light is Jesus, the light is God. And it's never we never lose, sorry, what am I trying to say? It's never God's fault that we can't see the truth. God is the light is there. It's our eyes that do not seek the truth, that do not see the light. And when we see the light, it opens up the word, like we've got here. As you study the word in God's light, you see things that if you go in here with a belief that actually there is no God, this is just written letters and there's nothing else. But I don't know, the whole presence of God illuminates the truth and brings the truth to light, as they say. And it's part of this rebuking of the evil generation around it. They cannot see it.
Yeah. So let me just. I think there's a lot in what you're saying there, David. I just think, so by an evil generation not being able to see it, why do you think they can't see it? Because I think what you're saying is absolutely spot on.
They've got gods that are not God. They've got themselves that are actually above who God is. There's especially as you say, we're going to get onto the Pharisees and the lawyers. They have status, and status is important to them, and status is more important than God's light. So if you have something the basket that goes over the light is something from ourselves, that we put the basket over the light that stops us actually seeing the truth.
Wow, that's great stuff. Thanks, David. And I think
How do we put the basket over?
How do we by putting something above who God is? So if we put ourselves greater than God in terms of our status, who we think we are, rather than who God thinks we are. And that's why it's so important to actually study the Word, because it shows who God thinks we are. And there's a lovely song that says, "I am who He says I am." And also, I mean, there's things like we even right down to, I can't forgive myself for something that I've done, but God has forgiven us. So actually, it's knowing that you are forgiven that takes us beyond there, because other things hold us back. It puts the basket over the light and stops the light coming into bringing forth fruit in our bodies. So it's you can go through here and see who you are, see who God, what God's promises are, and bringing forth the kingdom into your life right now. Otherwise, you put a basket over the light, and it stops it.
Yeah.
And also looking for something else apart from God to bring the truth into your life. I won't go any further.
Yeah, I like the way Jesus says, "No one puts a basket over a lamp."
That's right.
Because you'd be a numpty, and then he's saying, actually, you're doing this all the time.
So he could say, "You numpty generation."
Yeah, thanks, David. Leslie, and then Carolyn.
I was just going to read the note that I've got here. In verse 33, a bowl was something that contained about 2 gallons of oil, I guess. I mean, I think of a lamp or a bowl with the experience I've got in my house, and of course it would have been a different thing in those days. A lamp is meant to give light to those who are near it. Jesus had publicly exhibited the light of the gospel for all to see, but the Jews requested more spectacular signs. The problem was not with any failure on Jesus' part in giving light. It was with the faulty vision of the Jews. So they were asking back in 16, others tested him by asking for a sign from heaven. Those asking for a sign don't need more light, they need good eyes to allow the light to enter. So it's within us to be seeking and looking and asking and finding, because it's there for us. And I found this passage slightly confusing as it was being read, because it's been translated from an original language, and so I mean, if there's light in a room, I guess there'll be dark corners, but light is light and it lights everything up. But if we are unable to see that and enjoy it and appreciate it, that's got to be our issue, not the fault of whatever is giving light, in this case, talking about Jesus and his light.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. I've got Carolyn, then David, and then Jenny. Go for it, Carolyn.
Yeah, no, David was mentioning about people don't forgive themselves. I don't know what context that has to do with the light. What does that have to do with the light, David? I mean,
I think I understand what the question is. It's quite good in Matthew. He has a similar thing in Matthew 6:22. He goes, "The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness." If
Yeah.
therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Now he goes on in the next passage, he says, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. And he's talking about there specifically about the love of money being the basket that covers the light. If you have a love of money, it can actually douse the lamp that's shining from God.
Yeah. So
not
what's that
that-
to do with the unforgiveness then? I don't get that.
Well, unforgiveness can be if you don't agree that God has forgiven you, and
Yeah.
you find it difficult to forgive yourself, it
Yeah.
douses, it puts a basket
Okay.
over the truth,
Okay, yeah.
because the truth
So-
is you are forgiven,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
we
think-
can forgive ourselves.
Yeah, I think the importance with that is to know that you're forgiven by God, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that to go around worrying that you've been forgiven by other people, I think can be a real snare, because you're worrying about how other people have forgiven you
So
so
you're
much
putting-
that you
putting-
kind of put your own value
So-
less, because in Psalm 8 it says about, you've made all this, Lord, with your fingers, and how mindful are you of us, which means I used to see that as well, how little we must be, if that's so vast, how tiny we are. But I only just realized that lately, that actually it means that we are so tiny, and yet God is mindful of us, which means we're very, very, very valuable.
Yeah.
And I've only just sort of really come to that revelation sort of
That's
like
brilliant.
lately, and I hope it's not too late to have come to that revelation.
No, it's
because
not. No.
I've been running around trying to be loved by people around me, and it's sinking sand, really.
And I think in this, it's anything I think David was using the illustration to try and make it about anything that we put as a basket, whether it's unforgiveness or anything that can form a thing. And I think even our fears sometimes can cause a bit of a barrier, and we just need to think, if you put a basket over light, you will still get some shafts of light coming out through the basket, but it won't be anywhere near what it's meant to be. And I think what Jesus is after is us having his light right through our lives, and I think that's the heartbeat of this. And I think that's that. So I think that was just an illustration David was using, but I'll let David speak his piece, because he's got his hand up.
I get that now.
And
that
then
David
we'll go to
explained
Jenny.
it, yeah, David explained it very well.
Just sort of following on from that, I'm just reminded of Psalm 8, where he says, "What is man that you are mindful of him?" Talking to God, and the Son of Man that you visit him. For you have made him a little lower than, it says in this translation, angels, but the original is Elohim, which is actually God, because we are not lower than angels. We are actually lower than God himself. He says that, for you have made man a little lower than God. And I think that's an amazing position to be in. If you look at the original thing, it's you are so important to God. And we need to understand who we are in Christ, that actually we are forgiven. And if we put other people's views of us above God's views, that douses the lamp and gives us problems.
That's what I think. I think that's been an issue. I think, but I shouldn't really bring it. Not really supposed to bring it in. It's a personal thing, are you? I suppose, but
it's not about being arrogant, though. It's knowing who you are and knowing what other people are, because God so loved the world; He loves everybody, and judging other people is also a problem as well, because it puts you above God. Anyway, there we go.
Thanks, David. Jenny.
I'm going to, it's something completely different. This.
It reminds me of Monty Python, that statement. Now for something completely different. Yeah, go for it.
So a few years ago, I went on this course, which was called The Jewish Jesus, and this person had studied, like in Hebrew, what the words mean. And he said in he, at that time there was a colloquialism that was like, you've got a good eye, and a good eye actually meant you're a generous person. So I was trying to relate that to this, and I thought, well, if you're generous, you give out what God's given you, don't you? So if you're full of light, of God's light, then you would give it out. So putting the bowl over it, you wouldn't be giving it out. That's the only way I could look at it, really. That if it means you're a generous person, you don't keep things to yourself. You don't just hide things away. So you give out what God's given you.
Mm-hmm.
So different way of looking at it anyway.
Yeah,
they're all same, all good, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's good to look at things from different angles. That's a helpful one. So we're shining the light out in your illustration, whereas in the others, it's the light of Jesus shining into the world.
Well, it is the light of Jesus in us.
Yeah. So I think that's an application from the other. They probably both go together very, very well. So yeah, thank you, Jenny. So and I think that light shining out of us is an application. Well, we need to expect that too. And I think sometimes we put a basket over ourselves, don't we? Just following your analogy there. We can put a bit of that in there. There was just with the eyes, it's interesting. Carolyn, there's a bit of feedback off yours. I'll just mute you for a moment. Nothing personal. There we go. In Northern Ireland, the two different communities, the Unionist and the Nationalist, have a criticism of each other regarding eyes, which I hadn't realised. So they used to say, there's little statements they have for the other side, and both of them relate to eyes. And there's almost like one statement saying, well, the positioning of their eyes is too close together, and that's how you tell someone is from that community. And then they say, well, you tell someone's from the other community because they always got one wonky eye. and there's this kind of statement back and forth by two communities as jokes. But in actual fact, neither of them see clearly sometimes, and are claiming the other one's got a problem with their eyes. And I think with this, sometimes we can be a bit like that. We can look at other points of view and so on. And I think there's a balance here. It's looking at Jesus. It's not our point of view, it's his. And actually, it's letting his light shine into everything. And I think that's really, really important. So I think that's very good. David, do you want to say what you put up in the chat? I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, it's just I was looking at the translation of the word "I," and I've got there that in Vine's exposition dictionary, it defines the Greek word as singleness of motive. So any focus that's not single upon Jesus is evil, and therefore allows darkness into our lives. And he goes on to talk about if the light is darkness, and so we've got to discern what light is entering into us. Yeah. And I'm just reminded about the things that we watch on television, the things that we listen to on the radio, the input from the news and everything else. We have got to discern what is of God, what is not of God. Because if we've got two different things coming in, it means that God's not in control of what we actually do. We make a choice. And so nothing gets on the inside of us without our approval.
Yeah. I think putting it in Freedom in Christ terms is a course we've done years ago as a church. It's actually saying we are the air traffic controllers of the thoughts that land in our head. Right. And I think that's really important to realize the authority we have. But yeah, so thank you, everybody. I think we've had a look at that. But the last bit of that says that actually, therefore, lest light in you be darkness. If your whole body is full of light, having no part dark, it'll be wholly bright, just as when the lamp with its rays gives you light. And and I think that's the desire of God, that our lives are filled with his light. Every part of our body is filled with his light, his lamp kind of shining into us and through us. And if that's the case, you'll be bright. And actually, you've got to get used to walking with a high-vis vest on. Every move you make, everything you do, it'll be seen, because it's brightness all around you. It's not darkness. And we need to get used to some of that as Christians as well. And I think that's another aspect of this. God's desire is we glow and we shine his glory out like Moses did when he covered his face. There needs to be a shining of God's glory out through us as his light shines into us. And I think there's some very powerful things there which tie into what Jenny was saying as well. But let's move on to Pharisees and teachers of the law. And was it Pharisees and lawyers? So verse 37 through to verse 53. Would someone like to read that for us? Thanks, Leslie. Pip them all. Hand up first.
When Jesus had finished speaking, a Pharisee invited him to eat with him. So he went in and reclined at the table. But the Pharisee, noticing that Jesus did not first wash before the meal, was surprised. Then the Lord said to him, "Now then, you Pharisees clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you're full of greed and wickedness." That went down well. "You foolish people, did not the one who made the outside make the inside also? But give what is inside the dish to the poor, and everything will be clean for you. Woe to you, Pharisees, because you give God a tenth of your mint, rue, and all other kinds of garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. You should have practiced the latter without leaving the former undone. Woe to you, Pharisees, because you love the most important seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces. Woe to you, because you are like unmarked graves, which men walk over without knowing it." One of the experts in the law answered him, "Teacher, when you say these things, you insult us also." Jesus replied, "And you experts in the law, woe to you, because you load people down with burdens they cannot carry, and you yourselves will not lift one finger to help them. Woe to you, because you build tombs for the prophets, and it was your forefathers who killed them. So you testify that you approve of what your forefathers did. They killed the prophets, and you build their tombs. Because of this, God in his wisdom said, I will send them prophets and apostles, some of whom they will kill, and others they will persecute. Therefore, this generation will be held responsible for the blood of all the prophets that has been since the beginning of the world, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who was killed between the altar and the sanctuary. Yes, I tell you, this generation will be held responsible for it. Woe to you, experts in the law, because you've taken away the key to knowledge. You yourselves have not entered, and you have hindered those who were entering." When Jesus left there, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law began to oppose him fiercely and to besiege him with questions, waiting to catch him in something he might say.
There's a lot here. And I think here Jesus, I think, Leslie, when you paused and said, I bet that went down well, I think you kind of summed this up. Jesus didn't hold back. He was after a changed heart, his light and his life filling every heart. And here he calls it out. So I heard a quote, I think it was Keanu Reeves or someone was saying something where someone said, well, I'm a lover, not a fighter. And he said, well, if you're not a fighter, you can't be a lover. because actually you've got to stand up for stuff. And actually a lover needs to be a fighter. And that kind of statement, and you think, oh, that's a bit harsh. But actually in this, here's Jesus saying, well, actually this is the light that needs to be in you. But unless I call out some darkness, unless I say it how it is, it doesn't get dealt with. It needs to be dealt with. It needs to be worked through. And so what he's saying is, he's calling it out, saying, actually, you guys, you see, you got the dish, and you carefully wipe the outside, but inside there's a whole load of rubbish. But you don't deal with that. You're just dealing with this. But right back, that phrase, that prophetic phrase from the beginning of Luke, where Jesus is prophesied over, and it says, you know, this man will cause a fall and rising of many in Israel, and by him the hearts of many people will be revealed. Here Jesus is going for the heart again, and hearts are being revealed. He's saying inside you've got greed and jealousy and all those things inside your cup, and you're washing the outside. Look how shiny it is, look how nice it is, but inside it's full of rot. And actually you need to deal with the heart. You need to get that stuff out. And a good way to get rid of greed is start giving to the poor. Start doing some of that. Not to be seen, but actually to deal with the stuff inside. You need to be countering it. You need to think, I've got greed in me. Well, I'm going to break that spirit. I'm going to break out of that by being generous. I'm going to break out of some of that. He's challenging their hearts, very right in the very center of things. And I love the lawyer, because it's just so lawyerish, isn't it? It's like, do you know, Jesus, you might be insulting us with some of your statements as well. Just because, whoa, you want me to get started on you guys? Okay, I'll go for it. And he just lets rip. And he just starts showing things for how they are. Is Jesus being deliberately controversial, deliberately nasty? Did he get out the wrong side of bed? Is it that kind of thing? No. He loves the Pharisees and loves the lawyers and came to die for them just the same as he came to die for everybody. He is wanting to shine his light into the very souls of these guys, into their very whole being, because he wants it full of light. And unless his light shows up the muck that's inside, then it's not going to happen. And so I think there's a whole load of things going on here, and I think I'm not surprised there were fierce opposition, looking for some way to nitpick him, looking for some way to tear him down, because they had to stop this, because they were going to have to deal with something they didn't want to deal with. And he's saying, well, you tithe all your mint, but actually you don't do anything about justice. And as I hear those words, I remember the years and years in the churches that I was in, where they'd say, oh, we've got the gospel. We don't have the social gospel that those liberal lot have. And actually there used to be this division between, we've got the gospel, this is how you get saved. But actually we don't want anything to do with the justice side of things, because, we leave that up to God. But we just concentrate on this bit. And they were right in that. But what I'm seeing now in the church is wonderfully this heartbeat of Jesus that is for, yes, this is the gospel, and as a result of the gospel we need to be concerned about everything around us. We need to be shining his light of justice into areas. There needs to be something that comes from us that shines and fills the world and fills the rooms. And so in some ways what I experienced in my early teens, actually now the church, by and large, there's a lot of really good churches, solid on the Bible, solid on understanding their life in God, and bringing that into the world around them. And that is such a powerful thing. It's not this kind of blinkered view that we used to have, and I think that's so helpful. So I'll throw that in with this as well, because it's sort of like saying, well, you tithe the mint, but you don't have anything to do with justice. There's actually this sense of being involved in both, because it comes from the heart, and a clean heart shining with the light of Jesus. But I'll leave it there and throw it open. Any comments? I see David's hand up. Go for it, David.
Can I just ask Carolyn to mute, because we're getting a lot of interference off Carolyn's note.
There you go. Thanks, Carolyn. I'm not sure why it's happening, but it seems to be a background noise a bit.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. It's your Wi-Fi. It's and that's why I said it was. Yeah, but thanks, Carolyn. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I think just at the beginning here, he talks and he says in 37, as he spoke, a certain Pharisee asked him to dine with him. Obviously, I don't know why he asked him, because he disagrees with him. So he went in and sat down to eat. When the Pharisees saw it, he marveled that he had not first washed his hands. And it just reminded me, this is one of a misplaced priority is like a basket over the light. You see something that's so important to you, and you could actually say it's a symptom of religiosity. When what you do is more important than what your relationship is with God, and it's the basket. When you try and control people with making sure that they do a particular thing rather than actually develop a relationship with the Father, you're actually imposing a religion on them, which actually takes away the opportunity to learn about God and to develop that relationship. So I'm just sort of thinking about how it links into the basket, and it's a misplaced priority. Hey, you haven't washed your hands. Oh dear.
You haven't washed your hands, therefore I will not listen to anything you say.
That's right.
It's like and I think that's really interesting. And sometimes just washing our hands helps people hear what we're saying. So there's
it illustrates that actually he's just spoken that to them, and they just don't hear. They just miss the whole point of what he's just spoken about.
Yeah,
he must be going, oh no.
Yeah, but actually what I find interesting is very often it was the Pharisees who understood his parables.
Yeah.
It says they understood he told this parable against them. You're thinking, you got it, guys. Now do something about it. Oh, no. We're so offended that he told this parable against us. We can't do anything else. He didn't wash his hands. We're not hearing. He came to my house and he didn't wash his hands. Yep. I'm thinking, good grief, but I think that not hearing is just so, wow. Sorry, go on, David. Did I interrupt?
No, that's just something that struck me as I was reading, as Leslie was reading first of all.
Yeah.
Just spoken about the basket. He is sticking a basket over it.
Yeah. But the priorities, the kingdom priorities are what it's about. And we can do that anytime, put another basket over something. Oh, it must be about this issue or that issue or the side issue, but a lot of it's a battle for control of the heart.
That's right, and it's I stand here criticising the Pharisees, but I know full well there's been things in my life that have hindered my walk with God, because I've actually found that it's more important to do a particular thing than to achieve goals, for instance.
It was a man-made tradition, the hand washing. It wasn't even something that was needed because of the law. The law didn't stipulate it. It was one of the million other little rules and regs that the religious leaders had added, and then thought that was what had to be done.
But it's like every mother with a toddler. Wash your hands. Well, what's wrong? And why didn't he wash his hands? Do you know what I mean? I think that as you're saying, misplaced priorities. That's a really interesting statement, and I think it does sum up a lot of this. It's not that they didn't have priorities. It's not that they didn't have goals of how they live and an approach to life. It was just that it was misplaced. Actually, Jesus isn't against hand washing. He doesn't, but he's about something more important. It's not, we use this teaching to learn we never wash our hands because Jesus didn't. No, he's not trying to set a new law in place. He's actually trying to put the priority in place of the kingdom. And I think that's important. Leslie, And also with our hand raising instead of hand washing, we could be in trouble here on this line here, as we do this, oh, you can't speak unless you raise your hand. We can get into all of that, but sometimes we do have people speak who haven't raised their hands, and that's okay sometimes too, We're not religious about it. Right, Leslie?
It starts off when Jesus had finished speaking. A Pharisee invited him to eat with him, so he went in and reclined at the table. Now, I'm quite sure that Jesus knew what the system was, and that he should actually, before he reclined at the table, he should have washed his hands. I just wonder whether, Jesus is all-knowing, isn't he? He knows what's in the hearts of man. He must have known that this was going to cause a problem. And I just wonder whether it kind of was the moment for these issues to be brought up by Jesus because of the Pharisees' response. If the Pharisee had said nothing, if he just sort of muttered under his own breath, oh, Jesus hasn't washed his hands, but because he made a public thing of it, I just wonder whether Jesus kind of knew that this was going to be the moment to reveal quite a lot of stuff, following on from this lamp of the body, the business of covering something over, and the Pharisees not seeing the amazing things that Jesus was doing. They were just they had their hearts hardened, their minds covered with their religiosity and their traditions and their teaching. And they couldn't see what was in front of them.
Yeah. And I think, having seen this in settings in churches, it can be terrible. People see the wrong, there's one little thing they get stuck on, and they miss all the rest. And I like what you're saying there, Leslie, that you think Jesus deliberately didn't wash his hands.
Well, it maybe not have been an accident that this happened. It might have been actually...
I know if I didn't wash my hands, my mom would hope I'd done it deliberately to make a spiritual point. And show that her work was really well done, But I think, and I think that's left open. We don't know, and I think it's a good angle. Thanks, Leslie. I want to ask a question here, because I think we can zone in on Pharisees. Oh, those terrible people. Oh, they this and they that and they the other. But inside all of us is a temptation to be like that.
Yeah. And
actually, if we read this through and look, how can we be Pharisaical? How can these woes Jesus is speaking, where we get legalistic about something, or whether we get Pharisaical about something, how can that apply to us? And I don't think it does apply to many of the people here, but I'm just saying, how can it? And I think that's important to look at, because it keeps a watch on things as well. It's not to get drawn into it, but it's almost looking at what Jesus had set us free from, if you understand what I'm saying. But I just think if we look at the Pharisees as we don't really learn anything. If we look at, I could be a Pharisee, I've got leanings that way at times in my life over certain things. Actually, how do we deal with that? Then this
My hand is up.
Your hand is up. Go for it, Leslie.
I think, the important thing, do we mention this every day? The heart of man. And I think we need to be aware of what's perhaps in our hearts, that we have. The heart is the good ground for the seed of the word to be planted and to flourish. And I think, doesn't Jesus say it here, that their hearts, they're worried more. We can be worried about our outside appearance. Have I got my best clothes on? And miss the fact that actually it's the inside that's important. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't look nice, but there's a balance. There is a balance.
Yeah. Thanks, Leslie.
I'll
Very
put my
very
hand
clean
down
looking
now.
hand as well. Right. Looking here, I'll just dig into this a little bit, and it says, but you clean the outside. You foolish. All right. He describes them as foolish. You Pharisees clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but you're full of wickedness and greed. And I think that sense of greed, what is greed? Greed's saying me, 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 me. I want more, 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 more. I don't want anyone else to have some. I want it, and that kind of drawing to ourselves all the time. I think we can all be prone to that, particularly when we're going through a tough time or something. Me, me, me. It gets all drawn in, and I think sometimes it's how do we keep that outward focus, and the wickedness, basically. If you could get away with anything, how wicked would we be? There's a thing called desistance in criminology, and desistance is all of us would commit crime, but what stops us? And very often I don't want to be caught. Actually, I want to live my life outside of prison. Actually, I'd like some of those things stop people doing crimes. Other things are things like having Jesus. You realize I don't want to destroy things here. I'm having a great life with Jesus. I don't want to go that way. Actually, he's changed me. I don't have to go that way. And so desistance can be a lot of things, but it's actually looking at what stops the wickedness that can be in our hearts. It's actually Jesus. How do we make sure he fills our hearts and floods us and moves through us? And so we're not just polishing the outside, looking good. Hi, I'm wonderful at church. I'm super. How are you doing? How's that? But actually, we need to get real with each other and deal with the stuff inside, and work that through together. I'd love a church where someone goes, "Hi, I'm a drug addict. Hi, I'm struggling with this. Hey, I really hate my neighbor. Hey, I'm struggling with all these," and actually help each other. Well, I used to struggle with that, and this is how I dealt with. This is how we work through addictions. This is how we do that. Working together actually helps draw all that stuff out when we let the light in. And I think it's so important. I've seen Andy appear. I'll take his face as a waving hand. I think that's what you intended, isn't it, Andy? No. but anyway. Good to see you, Andy. I hope you cleaned the inside of that cup. Right, Jenny.
I think it's he's saying about and the love of God, because it's the love inside us that matters, isn't it? Because if we've got the love, if we love God, then we will naturally want to do the best for other people. I'm not saying we always do it right, but but they were just putting the law before the love of God, weren't they? They were just obeying things. Well, I've got to do it this way, I've got to do it that way. But you can still do it like that, but not love God.
Yeah.
It's loving God that matters. Because first knowing how much He loves you, of course, and then you can love other people and love. So that's more important than anything, isn't it? The love of God in us, and that gets rid of all the other things that aren't productive, in the right way.
So what you're saying, Jenny, is if in the inside of our cup we have this tenderness and relationship with God that's constantly going, Lord, how else can I give? How else can I serve? How else can I help others? How else can I... And we've got that. What would you like me to do today, Lord? What's that? That friendship and the relationship with Him actually challenges that stuff that could grow up in us. And so it's not looking at the polish of what's around us, how we come across to others, but it's actually what's flowing from within us that affects the lives of others. And I think that's a really great point. And so if we move further down some of the Pharisee things, I'm not seeing any waving hands. It's basically, you tithe mint and rue and herb and neglect justice and the love of God, which is also tying in with what Jenny says. You ought to have done that without neglecting the others. Woe to you, Pharisees, you love the best seat in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplace. So it's that status before others. Woe to you, you're like unmarked graves that people walk over without them knowing. So I think there's some of these aspects. I'm seeing some yellow hands everywhere. Carolyn and then Andy.
Yeah,
and then Jenny,
they had so much responsibility, and they had so many, you know, they had so much privilege, and you know, and so I mean, they weren't thieves or anything, were they? They weren't criminals or anything like that, but they did have the responsibility of showing that justice to, you know, to the people around them, and I think that was you know, that was why Jesus was putting it on them, because you know, you're supposed to be the bosses, and he's going to show them that he's the boss of them. Yeah, in a way that's in a loving way, you know, in a loving way, fatherly way. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot,
By
Carolyn.
drawing
Oh,
back
sorry.
to him, drawing them back to him with, you know, through the prodigal son, if need be. Yeah. So I reckon a lot of them did go. I reckon a lot of them did. Yeah.
And I think I think you're touching on something that we'll look forward to in Luke 15 there with the prodigal son.
Being thankful.
So we'll but thanks, Carolyn. I'll go to Andy now. Yeah. Sorry, had you finished, Carolyn? Yep, I think you had.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I just felt that with this whole thing about the mints and the herbs and that almost you said about your tithes and your offerings, I think it's actually easier to do that than it is to care. And actually, there's a price that comes to care and to serve, which is a different price of giving your mints. It's easy, you know. Like I'll just allocate a few quid out my wages. That's it. I'm done. I'm sorted. But actually putting my time and effort into caring for someone, putting my time and effort into serving in the community of the church, that's effort. That's harder, you know. And I think some of that is what we need to look at, as is what, like Jenny says, you know, filling our whole body with the love of God, and out of that comes our ability to care and serve and put more than just our mints and our herbs in, which are only the start. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thanks, Andy. I think I saw Jenny's hand briefly, Leslie, and then we'll come. Oh, no, you haven't. I haven't. She may have just been scratching. Over to you, Leslie. Yeah.
Oh, right. I'm just being official now. Just religious here, making sure.
Good, clean hands. Yeah, go for it, Leslie.
It's not a washed hand necessarily, though, now. What was I looking at? Woe to you, Pharisees, you give the mint and the rue and all the garden herbs. You neglect justice and the love of God. I mean, justice was a big thing, wasn't it? Looking after the widows and people that needed looking after. Woe to you, Pharisees, because you love the most important seats. No, I'm looking for where it says greed. They're full of greed and wickedness. It's not just that they haven't done, that they've missed some small thing. They've actually got greed and wickedness motivating them. So these rules and regulations that are in place are not based on being holy for God and being set apart. They're actually for their own benefit. And there's somewhere else, isn't there, that Jesus complains that they don't give to look after elderly parents because they are colluding to take that money for themselves. So it isn't just that their behaviour's not very good and their hearts aren't very good. That it's actually more than that. It's that they've allowed themselves to become motivated wrongly, and they're covering that up under the guise of being motivated to do religiously.
Yeah.
So it's a real hypocrisy, isn't it? Hypocrisy being when you wear a mask to cover up who you really are and what you're really doing.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. Carolyn? It's a different tune from Leslie. Yeah, go for it, Carolyn.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about wickedness, but thinking about it, if they're not thinking about the older people, then maybe that is. I mean, I see wickedness as sort of like sacrificing children, but I suppose, yeah, thinking about it, if their motive isn't right, then it can lead to that, can't it? So, yeah, I didn't think of it as. I just thought of them as being not seeing what's in front of them, not seeing. Yeah, sort of being irresponsible, really.
But you raise a very good point there, Carolyn, and I think this is something we need to hear as Christians, really. Here Jesus is saying
irresponsibility. You mean?
No. I think it's the priorities. You see, Jesus is going for the heart. And what we love doing is we love saying, well, look at so and so, they're not doing it right. Look at the government, they're not doing it right. Look at this, they're not doing it right. But we don't actually look at our hearts. And what Andy's saying is it's expensive to love people. It's expensive to care for widows. It's expensive to do those things. And what he's saying is don't neglect the tithe, but actually you do this as well. and that would challenge greed in your heart and wickedness. It challenges some of those things. And I think this kind of labeling things as wrong, and I think this is what happens when we get into politics and things, is there's almost like about 7 areas that Christians tackle, and they leave all the other areas out as minor. And actually that's in some like America and places like that, you find that very, very clearly done. So they don't care for the poor in some of the things they're saying, but they've actually got these other things are much more major than this. And I think that kind of priority system is not all that the Bible teaches. It's actually saying all these things need dealing with. And actually, yes, there'll be different priorities, kingdom priorities that God gives in that. But it's got to come from Him. It's got to be that thing coming from the heart. And I think sometimes we can get caught up in things. I mean, you look at the news at the moment. You've got the Russia-Ukraine thing. You've got the news coming from all over the place. Down one track, not listening to the... And don't want to hear anything like that. Don't want to have anything to do with, because we just done... And you're thinking, actually, there's awful things that happen in war on both sides. There's no war that's just one-sided and nice. It's horrible. And actually that's what's hitting us. And you sort of think, in some ways, we can get so narrowed down. We've got to keep that kingdom heart, that kingdom perspective, that lets God flow into us, that gives us a love for our enemies, that gives us a love for people that disagree with us, that actually helps us work through all those things. And when we find yuck in our heart, we need to deal with it and let the love of Jesus in, and sometimes take action that challenges that and works against that. And I think there's some of those things that we can learn pretty powerfully from this passage. I'm conscious of time, but I think that wanting to be seen before others is important. But also this kind of like, oh, well, it's okay, we're not like the guys who killed all the prophets. But actually, what Jesus is saying, you've actually, by what you've done, actually agreed that your ancestors did this, and by doing that, you are like them. And actually, this is all going to fall on the wickedness for it all of what you're a part of, and everything else you tie yourself into is falling on this generation. So Jesus is saying that actually, you say, oh, it wasn't me, it was my ancestors that did that. Oh, it wasn't me, but it was so and so. Actually, everything you've got's built on what happened before. Everything, he's saying, yeah, you're tying yourself up in knots. There's a light of God that comes that's incredibly costly. There's a light of God that comes that opens our eyes to things, that is expensive, that is costly, that is difficult. But actually, it's the very heart of God, and it shines light into the world, and it brings transformation. And I think, the Pharisees being out for Jesus to trip him up in any way they can is how this finishes up. And they press him hard and provoke him and try and get him to speak about things and try and draw him into things. And And that's the pattern for Jesus' ministry. Did it stop Jesus' ministry? No. Did Jesus' ministry continue? Yes. Did it get more and more powerful? Yes. You know, and you just sort of think, it's just incredibly powerful, this kingdom of God coming in the world and Jesus bringing it in. So I think we've reached 5 minutes past time. I think we'll call it a day there, unless anyone's got anything quickly to chip in. Bursting inside, ready to come out. Okay, I will take the silence as either your Wi-Fi is not working or you're genuinely silent. We'll move on. But thank you so much. It's been great today. I think we've stirred some stuff up on this subject, and I'll just move us offline.